Welcome, everyone, to Multi-Hyphenate Mastery, the place to be for those who refuse to be confined or defined by a single role. I'm Michael Cinquino. I am your host. I am very excited today to have Jamie Carroll on the show. Jamie is an Emmy-nominated producer, award-winning filmmaker, former professional actor, and casting director for both scripted and non-scripted programming. As an audition coach, Jamie has successfully coached actors into all levels of roles, from co-star, guest star, recurring, series regular, film leads, and beyond the screen to Broadway and regional theaters throughout the country. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Michael, for having me.
I am so glad you're here. And before we hopped on, Jamie let me know that she might have a couple of questions for me, which has never been said to me before. So immediately I felt the stakes go up.
Ooh, I love it.
I love it. I would love to dive in on a question that you've said to ask yourself a lot. And that's the question, what's possible here? Now, full disclosure, I've been on the receiving end of this question because Jamie is somebody that is my teacher, someone I consider a mentor and a coach as an actor and as a human being. And one of the things that I've recognized in watching Jamie work with others and been on the receiving end of her coaching is she is a fan. She is truly a fan of you. So I guess the question I have is, what's possible here? Where did that come from? What does that mean? Like,
We're like a minute in and I'm already crying. Thank you for that.
of course.
Where did it come from? It's something I've always been deeply curious about. There's something thrilling about watching an actor or a script or even a community of people come to life and support each other. And I think we spend so much time trying to do good that we forget about our ability to be great if we're willing to be silly, walk towards mistakes, towards failure. And I've had people that have moved out of my way the fear of failure and doing bad work so that it was possible for me to do something that I was proud of, that was scary. And that is something that I always strive to do, because once we take out the fear of judgment and the fear of failure for all of us, the only thing left is what's possible. So that has always been a moving, guiding mark in my life.
A thought that's come to me as you were speaking there, Jamie, was I bet she's had a whole bunch of really great teachers.
I have.
I know there's Larry,
Yeah.
right? But I
Yes.
also feel like one of the many things we have in common is that the universe has gifted you one great teacher after another. So that mindset of, letting go of the idea that there is even such a thing as doing it wrong. Is that something that came to you at a certain point in time? Is it something that's evolved? Was it a common thread? Is there a particular teacher?
It's such an evolution. For years of my life, I was convinced that there was either you were good at something or you were bad at something. And now I think it's Carol Dweck who has said that is a fixed mindset. And I was living very much with a fixed mindset. And I remember being 19 years old and trying to put a monologue up. And it was literally the Nina monologue from The Seagull about how she couldn't be an actress. I was just thinking, I don't know how to do this, and I'm terrible, and I'm wasting my time, and this is awful, and I hope nobody ever sees it. And I had a wonderful teacher. Her name is Pam Scott. I'm going to cry just thinking about her. She's extraordinary. And she studied for many years with the Extraordinary Center CCAT and would pass on her teachings. And she would just start us out saying, there is no right, there is no wrong, you cannot fuck this up. And to have that feeling removed from you of being bad at something, of messing up, it opened doors in me. It opened me up to my own creativity, and it changed the way I spoke to myself. And I think that's what really great teachers can do, is they alter the way you talk to yourself. And she was the first teacher I felt that reached to me and taught me how to see myself differently. And she's an extraordinary acting teacher. So Pam, I love you. Yes. Yeah.
Do you feel like it sounds like one of the main elements of what you do as a teacher and human is reminding your fellow humans and artists that there is no such thing as a mistake because it's the perceived, Jamie, it's like, the stakes feel, even I, we've known each other, and like, even just knowing that, like, oh, you might ask me a question, I immediately, my brain jumped to, what's it going to be? Like, okay, am I ready? Like, what could it be? Readying myself. Can you talk, because it sounds like what part of what you're saying is you don't have to ready yourself. Could you maybe talk about the difference between being prepared and not having to ready yourself for a scene or a moment?
That's brilliant. I love the way that you've just put that. Um, I think that we can focus so deeply on readying ourselves that we forget about our ability to adapt. And I think that Meisner training is especially that, but it's training you for your ability to adapt moment to moment and trust that you can handle whatever's coming next. For me, as a coach, as a teacher, if an actor walks away trusting themselves more, then I've done my job, because that ultimately is confidence. That is saying, look, throw whatever you need to throw at me. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be okay. And that is, I think, one of the most freeing elements. There's a great quote by Brene Brown. Let's see if I can get this right. Strong back, soft front, wild heart. And I think that so often when we walk into circumstances where we might not feel that we know as much, or we're as ready as we need to be, we armor up instead of softening to it and saying, look, I know at the core, I know the code I live by, I know my values, I know that I'm going to find my way through it, and I'm going to let these moments in. I'm going to let this affect me. I might not know the answers, but I'm willing to sit with the questions. And the most interesting stories are about a series of questions that we want to know the answer to. And it's not about having the answer. It's about being open to the other person. It's about being open to the questions that arise. And I'm sure you've had the experience, whether it's on stage or on film, where you stop watching yourself and you're watching the other person and you surprise yourself. And your own creativity has a channel to get through. We stop so many of our impulses because we're afraid of what we might say, but truly there's frequently brilliance on the other side of it.
It took me a really long time, but the only work that I've ever done that's been worthwhile is when I've gotten lost.
Yeah.
And it's then become the aim for me, to prepare enough, and then if I'm in a scene with Jamie, it's like I just want to get lost with Jamie. I don't know where we're going to go, and then letting go of the idea. One of the things I always say is, like, to let go of the idea of how I think it should go. Is that words you would use? Is there another way you might put it? And then I'll ask you, beyond the acting space, beyond the camera, beyond the stage, do you feel like these principles that we're talking about right now, this idea of knowing where you want to go, but letting go of how you think it should go in the day-to-day life, because I know that what you do extends beyond the room that you teach in. Do you feel there is some sort of mirror, parallel, same, different, similarities?
It's exactly the same, honestly. It's exactly the same. I
Yeah.
think pretty much getting to study as an actor prepares you for so many twists and turns in life, because I don't know about you, Michael, but from a young age, it felt like people are asking you, what do you want to do when you grow up? Who do you want to be? What do you want to be? And as though there's an ultimate final answer to it. And for me, just like a great story, it's a series of questions that happen in different seasons of your life. And you think that it's about getting to a certain identity. Oh, now you're a working actor, or now you're a professional photographer. But really, it's about what's fascinating you right now. What are you curious about right now? And how might you find more engagement and fulfillment if you let go of the plan? So I'll say this, I've been through 3 careers at this point, and I'm sure there will be others, because I will continue to evolve. It always comes back to, when am I most engaged in my day? When am I most engaged in my life? And if you're willing to let go of an identity that you might hold, and we hold these identities because frequently you're getting kudos as a child, as a teenager in these really formative years for, oh, wow, you're so good at this. Oh, how about this? So you start to take on this identity about what you need to be instead of how you want to live, how you want to spend Thursday at 4 p.m., how you want to spend a Saturday morning, what type of people do you want to be surrounded by? Those to me are the much bigger questions than what job do you want to have?
Do you feel one of the things that comes up for me is everybody needs an acting coach, everybody needs a director. And my reasoning for that is there are things that Michael cannot see. I cannot see them because they're painful for any number of reasons. So going back to this idea of questions, Jamie, questions keep coming up a lot. And what I tell my presentation skills coaching clients, I'm like, a presentation is just a bunch of fucking answers to a bunch of fucking questions. And you just have to put them in the right order to make sense of it for people. It's really just a bunch of questions. So let me ask you this. Do you feel similarly that all of us need some sort of external force in the form of a human being to go, have you thought about this? Because a lot of the coaching that I've ever gotten from anybody is like, did you think about this? It's like, no, I
No.
didn't. But it's so obvious. Why didn't I think about that? Because I couldn't. So one of the things that I loved about being in your space is this idea that you're in a physical space and you get asked questions. It's that idea of unexpected inevitability and in a story, which I love. Do you feel that us human beings can be somewhat incapable of being able to ask those helpful questions?
Absolutely. And for me, so many of the great breakthroughs of my life have come from somebody else saying, well, what about this? And you're like, oh, it's so obvious now. But when you're mired in your own story and limitations that you're telling yourself or invisible rules that you might be living by, having somebody else jump in and say, but that's possible. And I see that you actually enjoy doing this and you're good at that. Most of most of the great changes have come from somebody else. It starts with a feeling inside of you, but then it comes from somebody else, hopefully very close to you, or a coach that you're working with, or a therapist, whoever it's going to be, but recognizing that something in you is shifting. And have you thought about this? But we sell ourselves short and we stop so many things. We stop so much of our own progress because we're afraid of failure, judgment, of wildly unlikely outcomes that we tell ourselves. If I do this, then everything will fall apart. Will it? You might feel silly, but you'll probably be okay.
The voice of anxiety, and we're all going, insert whatever, and we're all going to die.
Yep.
And I'm going
Yep.
to, yeah. So let me ask you this. It's not always possible to have a coach there with you in some critical moments. Um, is what would your advice be to someone who, how would one ask themselves these questions and maybe get beyond the inner kind of noise and break and interrupt that pattern?
It's, for me, it's about being more specific in what it is you're really trying to do. So going back to the identity of an occupation, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like I was saying, how do you want to spend any given Tuesday at 3:30? What is it that you hope that you're going to be doing? When do you come most alive? What problems are you really interested in solving? When do you lose track of time? And it's asking yourself, when are you engaged with your own life? Not when are other people telling you you're doing a good job, but when are you engaged in your own life? I used to lead a lot of teams when I was when I was a casting director, a casting producer really. And we'd put together people that you're going to be on the phone, you're going to be writing up the one sheets, and you're going to be doing outreach. And the thing I would always ask the team is, what are you good at and what do you want to be great at? Because
Mm.
we all need that feeling of, I'm doing a good job. And then you also need that stretch of, I really want to be able to do this. And to me, having those two elements taken care of keeps you alive and present and excited and curious about what's coming next. That would be my 2 cents.
So the one half is asking the right questions,
Mhm.
or questions, or helpful questions, I should say. The second half, then, of course, is, or at least maybe the second larger part of it, is execution. What now? I know we've got a 10K, 20K, 30K thing that I've actually never seen before, which is super neat. So I mean, that kind of might bring me to, okay, great. So because there's two parts of it, and like and just speaking for myself, doing all the work, because one can do all the work and then in the moment of truth completely blow it. And having been out of acting school 20 years now, I can say with 100% certainty, the actors that I graduated with, the ones who undermined themselves the least, have worked the most. Period. It had nothing to do. Everybody was talented, but that was it. So how does one how does one then follow through in a moment to moment? Because at the end of the day, it's a moment to moment. Write down all these questions in the morning. I'm good to go. I come up on my iCalendar. Great. And then 2 hours later, I'm doing something that is just not helpful. How does one stay consistent and persistent, I guess? How have you stayed consistent and persistent?
I think giving yourself the freedom that at times you're not going to be consistent and persistent. Like
Hmm.
you're going to fall, you're going to have seasons of life where things overwhelm you, but to always bring yourself back to what is it I want to do with this day? So I am a big fan, as you know, of morning journaling and setting up your day with intention. What is it I hope to accomplish? Where can I make a little bit of progress? And really holding yourself accountable so that you're living your life on purpose and not reacting to everything that's thrown around you, because things are going to be thrown around you and you have to be ready for that. You have to adapt to it. But it is so easy to get lost in the busy work of life and not the deeper work of what is it that I want to leave behind? What are the contributions I want to make? How can I add value here? And it's the things that nobody's ever going to say, you should really stop and study for an hour. Or have you thought about studying this completely unrelated topic? Nobody's ever going to tell you that you have to do that or that today is the day that you have to show up for yourself. That's something you have to make a choice to do every day. And I think it's a matter of taking yourself and your talent seriously, but also having a sense of humor about all of it too.
Mhm. Can you talk to me about your planning method that I have not ever heard of before? Well, first of all, let me go back a second. So, are you still doing morning pages?
The morning pages like the Julie
Yeah.
Cameron,
Yeah.
I haven't done those in a little bit. I go through seasons with those, so I haven't
Gotcha.
been doing them right now, but they are
Gotcha.
they are wonderful and highly recommend them for all of us.
Yeah, for those that aren't familiar, there's a book called The Artist's Way. There's a great story behind that book, a great New York story behind that book. One of the main exercises are morning pages where you just sit there first thing in the morning and word vomit, really handwrite 3 full pages of stream of consciousness. And there's just something about taking the action of doing that. And for me, I've learned that like you don't need to be inspired to take action.
Yeah,
You can just
absolutely.
take action, which is
Absolutely.
one of the most bitter pills for me to swallow all the time. Feeling can have nothing to do with it. There was a specific method you mentioned, this planning method, and what I love about it, Jamie, is that it sounds like there's like almost like you're setting up a camera shot where there's like near, mid, and far, like what's in the near ground, the mid ground, and the foreground. So I love the image. Could you maybe share with folks how you particularly plan, if you're comfortable, how you particularly plan and what you use? What is this 10K, 20K, 30K thing? How does this work?
So it's a view. It's, looking at something from 10,000 feet above it, from 20,000 feet up above it, and then 30,000 feet up above it. And I cannot remember where I even heard that phrase at this point, but it's definitely been used before. That's not me. The thing that I focus on every day is, so the 10K items are the tasks, the chores, the reactivity of life, things that need to get done today, and they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you will be able to cross it off your checklist and it will go away. From 20,000 feet, it's something that you're going to see progress on in a year from now, maybe 6 months from now. But we all know the absolute despair of pouring yourself into something and not seeing any results instantly or even within like a 3 month time period. So having something that holds you accountable to doing it every day, even when the results are invisible, is really helpful for me. And I am such a nerd about like checking little things off my to-do list that even though it won't be done today, anything on the 20K list, I know that I put an effort in towards it. I made progress on it today. And that keeps me working consistently because we know that all great accomplishments come from small achievements repeated. But at the very beginning of all endeavors, success and failure are completely alike. And it's so easy to lose heart. And it's so easy to stop doing things that would have proved valuable if you just stuck with it. Because then after a certain amount of time, the interest compounds on what you're doing. And you hit this point where you're getting better, and then you're getting infinitely better.
Mm.
So for me, that's the 20K. And then the 30,000 feet are the big like 5-year moves that might involve an addition to your career, a new hyphen that you're adding to your name, that you're not going to see progress on it probably in the next 2 years, but what can you be doing today that is a vote for the type of person that you want to be in 5 years from now? So every morning in my little journal, there's the 10K list, the 20K list, and the 30K list, and I'm making sure that I'm thinking about all of those things. And it
No.
keeps me living a fuller life for me.
You transfer? I'm getting super. You never know where these things are going to go.
It's true. It's true.
Do you use Notion to track these things? Because one of the challenges that I have is like on a 5-year thing, I'm like, where the hell am I? I don't know. I'm not going to see any results in this thing forever. Where the frig am I in the process of this, of these 300 steps that do I have to take? So how do you maintain a perspective, because the day to day is one thing, but then 20K and then 30K, how do you follow up the next day to have that persistence and consistency? Is it through Trello?
It's Trello. Yeah. I have a Trello board that it's just like small columns of the different types of roles that you're going to play, right? Which might be photographer, actor, um, coach, director, producer, and what are you building towards ultimately? And then once a week for me, just having the check in with that Trello board or however anybody wants to track it, and then building out small steps from there. So like letting myself have an hour on Sunday where I'm really reviewing everything I've written down in my notes app, which tends to be like this wealth of information that I would otherwise lose. I have so many notebooks, ridiculous. Checking with the notebooks, checking with the notes I take, so that all of these great insights and ideas that we might have don't get lost to, somebody needing you to reply to an email right away. So Trello is my go-to. I use the Things app every day. So I put like 10K, 20K, 30K on there. So I'm also checking things off, and that follows me around. I have it on my phone and my computer. And then the weekly check-in is such a big deal. It is,
Wh-
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's just so easy to get lost in reacting to life and not being intentional with your days. For me, I'm sure there are so many people that are just like, that's not an issue for me, but it is an issue for me.
It is an issue for me. And
Yeah.
I was going to hazard a guess here. And you're, of course, going to correct me if I'm wrong. I'd be willing to bet you weren't always this meticulous. And you were. So, because a lot of times people think we come out of the womb the way we are now. So, can you maybe paint a picture of maybe how it was versus how it is now and how you got to be now? What?
So you mentioned something in your bio, Michael, about not being a great student, and I was not a great student. I was a terrible student, except for English, which I was very interested in and had, a lot of experience with. Other than that, in my life, I was very good at convincing people and like up into my early 20s, convincing people that I knew what I was doing and I was pulled together, but I was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. Uh, I was just trying to get from one step to the other and not have anybody think that I was messing up. And I was so deathly afraid of being anything less than like ready to go that I didn't prepare. I didn't I didn't put in the time I needed to because what if I came up short? And then I had nothing else to fall back on. So I could give you a perception of I've got this But if you look closely, I very much, in fact, did not have this. And it took, like, all throughout my 20s, even into my early 30s, of testing out different methods and learning how to show up for myself and having that be the thing that mattered the most.
What does that look like? What does that mean?
It's it's spending an hour studying at 6 o'clock in the morning before my daughter wakes up and saying, you said you were going to do this, do it. Just do it. You don't have to do a great job at this right now. This is a steady block. You can just put in your hour, but show up for yourself repeatedly so that you know when push comes to shove, you'll adapt. And that little thing every day repeated has made me think, well, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And it's completely changed the narrative that I tell myself. But while it would have been lovely to have been like that at 18, it took many years to get there. It takes years of messing up, coming up short, faking your way through it, and finally getting okay with maybe you're not good enough yet. Or maybe you're going to come up a little bit short, but you'll get better. You know how to get better. Just do that. Just focus right now on how you can grow just a little bit. And that mindset shift frees you, what freed me. And also, not allowing yourself to judge other people is, for me, like the easiest way to not worry about how I might be being judged at any given moment. Everybody, for the most part, is putting in their best effort. It's hard to get up. It's hard to get in the arena. And if you hold yourself to the standard of, I will not let myself judge you, I will be curious about my own judgment of you. You know, if I feel myself putting up that wall, it's like, well, why am I doing that? What am I intimidated by something here? Am I curious? Am I not looking deeply enough? And those why can't I speak? Those mindset shifts have changed me.
Curiosity seems to take a front seat in your day-to-day. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Don't you feel that when you're curious about something, time fades away? You're engaged in what you're doing.
Yes, I always love the question. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that's true. Like, could there be something else? And then your idea, and I feel, this outward judgment of others. And I have learned, that the things that I might despise in another human being have everything to do with me and nothing to do with that other person. So for me, it's a really wonderful gift when I start judging someone because it has nothing to do with who they are and everything to do with something inside of me that I'm not okay with in some way. And then this idea, because I remember one of the things you said, it really stuck with me, is that you never say a film or something is good or bad. Who you say, who am I to say that? You say it may not have been my particular taste, but what is good? What is bad? What does that mean? And this idea of kind of walking in non-judgment and living in curiosity, I feel like, and for me, curiosity is it just the attention is off yourself. And I feel, and one thing I'm really, really big on is getting not lost in other people, but curious about other people and really becoming just absolutely fascinated by why someone is doing something or what about a particular topic for them, or, why are they inspired by this? And it feels, to me, there is this relief that comes with curiosity where you can let go of what should be, and you're really open to whatever can be. And I've only done one film, but one of the things I really learned on my short film was that this thing is much bigger than I could fit in my head. I cannot force the entire vision. It would not live in, and it frustrated the hell out of me, Jamie, because I wanted to maintain control of it and be like, this is how it's going to play. And I realized, oh, shucks, I'm doing something that's got to live outside of me, that's got to be beyond what I can conceive in here. And that's why one of the things someone asked me the other day, like, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I don't really do a 5-year thing. I know who I am. I know where I want to go, but if you ask me where I would be right now 5 years ago, nothing, zero, nothing about that, with the exception of a couple things. So for me, it's like what you were saying earlier. I think curiosity has this wonderful role of discovering things that we never ever could have thought of before, like the good things. And I think a lot of times we think, well, these terrible things are going to happen. Well, isn't the opposite also true? Couldn't a bunch of really great stuff happen that you didn't ever think of? And do you feel that that's at, like, in scene work especially, do you feel that has its place?
Keeping yourself curious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you take
absolutely.
after take, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you get a piece of direction, like should you,
Whenever I'm prepping actors to work, when they're already working on set, our idea is never like we've come up with the answer. It's just, oh, what about this? Oh, what's possible here? And when you're an actor in film and television, you're not trying to give them answers, you're trying to give them options. And just like
hmm,
the experience you had of making a film, Michael, it doesn't come together until you get to the edit. And what's so brilliant about all filmmaking is it's such a collaborative process, and we think that it's going to be one thing, and then you start looking and you're like, oh, that's the story. That's what's actually happening here. Because just like in our day-to-day life, in every film, there's the film that's being photographed, and then there's the invisible story that's the human connection, it's the human emotion, it's the impact it has. And our days are filled exactly the same way to me. There's what we're doing, and then the invisible story that's living beneath the surface for most of us.
hmm.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back to teachers.
Okay, let's go back to teachers.
A name that I have heard time and now, for those of you who don't know, Jamie is just someone who holds a very high standard, holds herself to a very high standard in just so many respects. And to hear Jamie sing praises time and again of a particular human being, you go to yourself, well, there's just, this is not just anybody. If Jamie looks up to them, they're not just anybody. I would love to, I don't know much about him except you've said his name a lot. Could you talk a little bit about Larry and
Larry Moss.
why, yes, and why him? What, obviously he has had an incredible impact on you, Jamie. And I've never gotten to hear, yeah, and I've never gotten to hear why or how, really. What is it about Larry Moss?
What's amazing, Michael, is the way I'm reacting to him is the way so many people react to him. I've never I've never been in a space where I watch somebody raise both the bar for excellence and empathy at the exact same time. And that is what he does the instant he walks in a room. You would sit in his class for 8 hours, 8 hours. And I've definitely had other like clients of mine and friends and actors that I've thrown his way, and they're like, 8 hour class. And then they're in it and they're like, keep going, please keep going. Um, he holds such deep respect for what it means to be human. And when he is working with an actor, he holds the bar very, very, very high. But with such beautiful empathy. I once watched him in this workshop. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was just him, myself, and somebody else in the audience in that moment. And they were doing a scene that the actors were really just coming up against their own limitations for some really difficult work. And the nervous system dysregulates, there's defensiveness. And I watched the way that Larry moved around the punches that were being thrown his way. And it was with such grace to hold the mirror up to what the person was feeling with such love that they only wanted to do good work and that this is what it feels like to get better. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. This is what growth feels like. You're on the right path. And time again, he has opened my eyes to new ways of seeing and a new way of seeing myself. So I started working with him privately. I think it was 2018, in really how to break down scripts and how to understand what was underneath the world, because he has such a gift of doing that. And We were supposed to meet for a session to do, what was it? Chekhov's The Seagull. It was 24 hours in advance. I got an email from his assistant. I'm so sorry. I didn't tell Larry, or Larry didn't know that that was the play that we need to be working on. So we're going to have to reschedule. Now, Larry had worked on The Seagull, I'm sure, for 20,
Like
30, 40 years. He
a
knew it
couple
inside and
times.
out.
Yeah, yeah.
He knew it inside and out and could have very easily just gone through the session with me and breaking down the script. But the standard that he'd held himself to was, I must reread it. I must have new notes. I must be ready to meet her where she is today. And to me, that has always been a guiding light of, here is, I think, probably the greatest coach of our time saying, I'm not prepared to meet you right now. I need to be able to prepare better, to show up better for you. And to hold yourself to that standard, to me, it's just such kindness to the other, right? You're just, when people are walking to you and saying, I have this dream for my life, you must, as a coach, as a teacher, hold yourself to the standard of excellence that says, then I will make sure you're in good hands. And he has always done that.
Once in a while in one's life, something gets redefined for you. And a couple of moments ago, you redefined something for me through Larry. And there's a lot of talk of leadership out there, how to be a leader, leadership development. And you've literally given me the very definition of what it is to be a leader. And it is someone who raises the bar for excellence and empathy at the same time. Because for me, the way that as a teacher, my approach to teaching is one that I believe that a great teacher is someone who makes themselves progressively less necessary.
Absolutely.
And yeah, but raising the bar for excellence and empathy at the same time. To me, I got goosebumps when you said that, and it's just incredible. And then it made me want to ask the question for you, as you're describing Larry, and you've passed on, your view of this human being, this incredible teacher and leader. When the folks are talking about you, what do you want to embody, Jamie? Like, what is it, when someone else is on a podcast 10 years from now and they say, tell me of this Jamie Carroll. What is it, because I know you're specific about this and I really would love to hear what this means to you.
My hope is that anybody I've been able to work with has walked away trusting themselves more, needing a coach or a teacher less, and that they were safe to fail, found a new relationship with failure, with what it means to be part of a community and part of a team. Because even if in every lifetime, it takes a team of people working together to build something. And when we let go of the idea of, oh, I have to succeed for this, or I have to get this award or anything, and start instead building stories together, working with each other, supporting each other's risks, to me, that's when we come the most alive, right? We let go of the fear of being judged and instead walk into the beautiful space of being curious, of being supportive. And I hope that the thing anybody walks away from is that they trust themselves more, they talk to themselves kindly, and they do difficult things. The thing I always say that I ask here in working with me is, I'm going to ask you to do difficult things, but to be gentle with yourself. Because it's so easy to be hard on ourselves and do what's easy. All growth feels hard. All growth feels hard. So when you can say, oh, this feels difficult because it is difficult, not because there's something missing in me, it's because I'm trying to do something that I can't do right now. That is the space I hope to create and what I hope they walk away with.
Maybe 2 years ago it was, I was not having a very good time, and this is for the benefit of our audience. Yeah, not having a very good time. I might have said something about it on Instagram about being lonely. And very soon after I posted something about being lonely, which was like kind of a cry for help, I got someone slid into my DMs.
Gotta watch it.
And Jamie Carroll said to me, "Hey, why don't you come hang out at the studio?" And I had yet I had not been yet. Jamie's new studio in Midtown, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I had not been yet. And she said, "Come hang out. You don't have to work. You just come hang out with a bunch of artists." Firstly, that was one of the kindest things anyone's ever done for me. So I want to take the opportunity on the podcast here to thank you for that.
Yeah.
And secondly, to say back to this idea of space, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. For those of you that have not been to Jamie's studio, one of the things I love about New York is it's a city of spaces, and we go in and out of these spaces, right? It's a home space, it's a workspace, place, whatever it is. There is just something about the vibration in your studio space that when you walk in, and I'm getting goosebumps right now, and when you walk in, you sense there's something different here in a very positive way from every corner of the room. And what and watching you in the space is absolutely remarkable. And not all spaces and people and places and things like it. So what do you do, Jamie, intentionally to be able, because when I walk in, you're like, what? It's like, it's almost like X-Men. It's like this school for gifted. It's like Wolverine going, well, what is this place? Like, so how do you foster this? How do you continue to foster this environment where very clearly, the picture you painted a moment ago of, I'm going to ask you to do hard things, but I'm going to ask you to do it with compassion. How day to day, because I've been a couple times, how do you maintain this physical environment that is very, very tangible when you walk in?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for bringing yourself to this space, because when you enter a space, Michael, your energy, I believe, puts others at ease. So even just having you in a room is a wonderful boost for everybody else here. So thank you for that. For me, it always comes back to allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I think if you're a coach or a teacher in any kind, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable with your clients and to keep always the idea of do no harm at the forefront of your thoughts, because you know what it's like. It's so vulnerable up there as an actor. It's so vulnerable up there as a CEO making a presentation, even though it seems like it shouldn't be. Like, you are vulnerable the minute people's eyes are on you. And if somebody's coming in as a coach, as a director, to me, it's our job to know that. It's our job to know that there is a nervous system there that might be struggling, dysregulated. And how do you walk through with ease, with love, with kindness, while all still being honest and helpful in the approach? And I think if you work like that, if there is no sense of, one of the reasons you can't say in my space, that's a good film or that's a bad film, is because we're all going to make good and bad things. And that has to be okay. It has to be okay to be bad. That frees everybody up to try. I have definitely been in environments, and I'm sure you have too, or acting classes or any type of class, where it feels competitive, where it feels like the teacher is perhaps not having the best interest of heart of the actors, but of more so of themselves and how they need to be perceived. And it shuts people down and it makes them smaller. And I think if you walk in as a coach or a teacher or a director and say, I want to empower you to do your best work, then your focus is on what can I give here? How can I add value? How can I help? Instead of, let me say the right thing. Let me worry about what people are thinking of me. And that has always been the way I approach a situation.
Are there some common questions you ask yourself on a daily basis as check-ins? Because question continues to be that, or I would say, what are some of the questions that swirl around in Jamie's head day to day to keep you on track?
I mean, I look at my notes app and I write down these questions. And I'm like, where was I even thinking that? That's okay. Um, there are so many. I mean, the lead question that I start with every day is, how can I add value?
Hmm.
And that's to myself, to my relationship with my partner, to my daughter's life, to my clients, and that alone, it's such an empowering question because it says immediately, I have something to offer. And then the more you ask that question, the more ideas you start to have. How can I help? Oh, well, what if you studied psychology? What if you actually studied the nervous system? What if you took a moment and studied magic? Because we're talking about how do you keep an audience guessing? And that actually matters when you're directing actors. And then from there, you just find yourself in this world of unending questions, and you're deeply ingrained in trying to find the answers.
When did you have? I'm sure you know Joseph Campbell. Uh,
Yes.
Follow your bliss and don't be
Yep.
afraid. I mean, what was there a moment for you where Jamie, you came into the space that you're in now as a human being, where I feel like, and I don't think I've ever said this to you, but when I saw you in your space, the first thought I had was that is somebody at the top of their game.
Oh,
Period. I'm like, that is somebody at the top of their game right there. For those of us that struggle, it probably wasn't planned. But when did you come into this space where like, I feel like, and we need to talk about struggles too, because we don't want to paint an unfair picture here. But I mean, like, I just feel like you have found a rhythm to things where you're able to stay in some, and not saying you don't go off track and stuff like that, but when did you come into the space of really because I feel like you are the very definition of what happens when you follow your bliss. And for those people out, and you know what, and I will give credit where credit is due to myself. I get to do it too. There is an energy that I have access to that most people, they're like, you're always so energetic. I'm like, well, it's not, I don't have to try to, I'm not lifting, it flows through me. So when for you, was there a turning point in your life where you came into this bliss? If
yes.
so, what was that like?
Yes. I was literally on set for a television show. I had been called to set at 5 a.m. that day. I knew I wasn't going to film anything till at least 1 p.m. And I was sitting there thinking, I am actually not engaged with my life right now. I'm waiting for them to knock on the door to take me to makeup, hair and makeup, or to wardrobe. And this is not what engages me. Because I also had actors that were going to be auditioning. I was coaching at that time, and I was more interested in breaking down their scripts or figuring out what they were doing. And I thought, well, how do I actually want to spend my days? It's too hard to have to book an acting job. And then when you get it, to not also be so enthralled moment to moment. And it was really then re-examining, what do I enjoy doing moment to moment? Where am I lost in time? Who are the type of people I want to be surrounded with? And right now I was by myself in a trailer, and I was waiting. And to me, waiting and rushing are the only two ways to waste time. And I wasn't excited.
Ah, um, Yup. Let me ask you though,
Yep.
when these thoughts came in, was there an element of, but I should be an actor, or I'm supposed to be an actor, or am I going to be less than if I'm not this? Was
Oh,
any of that swirling?
absolutely. The thing, like you said, Michael, and I want to touch back on that, is like we need to talk about the struggles. Is it all sounds so lovely looking back, but when you're in it, so much of it is just, what am I doing? What am I doing? Am I throwing away these last like 7 years that I've just put into life? And like, I don't know what's on the other side of this risk. And I've read and watched so many interviews with folks who, they'll say, in 1992, I was doing this. And then in 2003, everything happened. You're like, what were those 10 years like? What were you doing on this?
Overnight success. He's an overnight success. I have been acting for 45 years
Yeah.
before I've taken this gold trophy, everybody. You know how many fucking plays I've done off Broadway? You know how many roommates I've had? Okay. I didn't just come out of
Mhm.
nowhere. Okay. I'm not, like onto the scene. It's like we gloss over that stuff and want to pretend like there's some sort of A B thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, let me ask you if you're comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
were there any sort of like super doubtful moments where you're
Oh
like,
my
it's not, I mean,
gosh.
or like the darkest of times, like, oh God. And then also, you made the leap to go off on your own.
Yeah.
Having worked maybe at other places, connecting and collaborating with other studios, you decided to go, I'm going to start my own studio. At the similar time, you were starting to be a mom too. I don't know what the overlap was there.
I mean, that was a crazy, crazy time in my life. So I didn't necessarily make the choice to go out on my own. I lost a job.
Hmm.
And in like the startup of the pandemic and all of these things happening. So I went out on my own because that was all I had. That was really all I had. And I had this idea. So I had this idea of the class I wanted to teach for years. And then I was able to do it. And then my life expanded beautifully. So I think I was playing it small by not seeing what was possible. I had an idea for a class that I knew would be very helpful because I had watched thousands of auditions at that point, and I had auditioned and booked work, and I I knew that what they teach us in conservatory programs is not the same as the thing that gets the job. And that's really frustrating stuff. So I had this idea, and again, I always come back to the question, how can I help? How can I add value? How can I help? Here's the way. And for the last 4 years, my life has expanded with that question. How can I add value? What can I contribute? And that gets me much what you were saying earlier, Michael, is the energy that kind of just channels through you. It's something that drives you in a deeper purpose towards what can I give to others, which to me is always the most exciting thing because what a gift it is that part of my job is to try to get better, to help other people get better.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What is there a possibility, or what about the struggle between being really good at something and then not enjoying it? Because there's only like one or two things I'm really good at. There's one thing I'm really good at, but I hate, but I hate it. I'm a great event planner. I'm a phenomenal creator. Yeah, I would imagine the same of you.
Mhm.
Um, uh, how does one, as a multi-hyphen, how do you wind up avoiding the trap of being really useful to someone and being awesome, but at the same time feeling complete? Because I was making way more money. I was making a ton of money doing these very high-end corporate events, and I was fucking miserable. And there's just no other way. I was flying first class, miserable. I was in a $3,000 night hotel, fucking miserable. Like I had one of their Amex cards put millions of miles on it every year, and I was fucking miserable.
No.
But I was really, really good at it, and they would give me whatever I wanted because I was really, really good at it. So how does one avoid the trap of being really good and being useful to people, but then having that suck your soul out? Where do you find the yeah.
Oh, I came up across exactly that. And I'm so grateful to, I can't even remember his name, but I was interviewing, this was years back when I was a casting director. I was interviewing for a permanent position as like the head of casting at a production company. And we're having this interview, it's going well. And the executive producer, the owner of the company says, look, I'll give you the job tomorrow, but I have a feeling you want me to say no because I'm looking at your resume and you're bouncing from show to show. And I don't think you really want to stay here. And I was like, I don't. I don't. Please don't. It was like, please don't give me this job. And I realized then, what am I doing? There is no end game here. We all have ideas of like, now you've arrived, but like, there is no arrival. There is no there. It's just a process of days that you go through. And this was not how I wanted to be spending my days. I was miserable. I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. My friendships were suffering. My relationship was suffering. Everything around me was suffering. And yet I was doing really well at work. And they kept giving me more money and more responsibility. And I was wildly unfulfilled. And I just kept thinking, what am I trading in my life for right now? What am I trading in my time for? I cannot get this back. And it was after that meeting and a few other things that happened that I was like, I need to go back to being an actor. And I, at that point, had barely dipped a toe in the stage at like 8 years or so. And then it refocused me into what are you doing day to day? Forget about the identity, forget about what people are telling you that you're good at. What is the thing you want to be great at? What is it you want to contribute? Where do you lose time? Because I don't lose time when I'm working at a production office. I'm very aware of time and how much time is passing. I'm like, oh, I've been here for 12 hours today. And I like the deadline of it. I like that there is a finished product at the end of it, but I did not like trading in all of my time. Really designing a life and not a career for me has been the key. I like autonomy of my time. I don't want to be doing the same thing every day, but I like a few things that I know I'm going to do every week. And other than that, I love to keep the rest of it as an adventure and like something else might change right now. You get it. I know you do.
Oh yes, that's why I'm grinning ear to ear. I totally get it. Yeah, no, you know, y'all haven't noticed. Jamie and I have much in common when it comes to a lot, and this idea, like I want to do these certain things, but I will go absolutely out of my mind on a repetitive task. If I know what the day is going to look like ahead, oh my God, it drives me insane very quickly. Going back to this another word, safety,
Mm,
safe.
mm.
Ah, you rolled your eyes. I love it. I love it. I love that you rolled your eyes. So let me. But you're, you know, speaking of challenges, this idea of you wanting to keep yourself safe, because you said that that was one of the things that was an obstacle for you. Are you comfortable talking a little bit more on what that's like for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it it was so second nature to me that I didn't even realize it was happening. But my life just kept getting smaller and smaller because I wasn't putting myself into the world in any way that was meaningful. I was just, okay, this is what we're going to do. Let me follow orders here. Let me follow orders here. And it had never occurred to me to say, actually, let's try it like this, or let's stop right there, or what could go wrong, or we have to avoid failure. But so much of safety is, and it's the same thing with I tell clients is it's it's not that we're afraid. Wait, hold on.
Hmm.
We we're so afraid with not being good enough that we don't ever see what's possible underneath it. And I was so afraid of making a wrong choice. And I was telling myself that the consequences of any of these actions was much bigger than it really was. That we just don't make any choices. And it had never occurred to me that indecision was actually safety. So I had gone through years of my life not deciding something. Something would happen and I would react to it. And then all of a sudden I have a career here and I'm doing this. And where was the purpose in it? What was I doing on purpose? So for me, it was that. That wasn't
So
the
going
most
back.
concise answer.
No. So going back to the idea of the only way to waste time was waiting. What was the waiting and
Rushing, waiting and rushing.
waiting and rushing. Those two extremes. Um, a second ago, when you were saying I'm not good enough, the question that popped in my head was by whose standards and to whom?
I'm
How would you
sure
know? What would indicate to you that you were good enough?
that's like now you've hit on the most obnoxious question that I ask in all of my classes, which is right after an actor does a scene, instead of saying what I think about it, I just say, "How did that go?" And I know
Yep.
everybody hates it. Everybody hates it.
How did that go for you?
How did that go for you? Because I don't even know at this point which voices I internalized over the years, but there was an invisible standard that I was holding myself to that was not helpful. And we internalize family voices, teachers throughout our lives. And we start measuring ourselves up against them and not what we think, not what we're aware of or how we might feel about a thing. So for me, good enough was just invisible forces about how I should be. And I guess coming back to my life theme, what could be here?
Hmm.
And taking away the should of it all and just keep replacing it, what could be, what could be. Um, and then the minute you stop looking to other people to tell you you're good enough, right? If you do the scene and the teacher doesn't say you're brilliant, that was fantastic, you take away that serotonin hit as a teacher or a coach and instead say, how'd that go? You're immediately putting the person's attention back to themselves. What was I focused on? What had my attention? What was I aware of? Right? Not what was the result. You can't know that. But you can say, I was focused on this. I was aware of doing this. And if you go through your life like that, well, now the voice that's starting to mean more is yours
Hmm.
and not the other people in the room. So
I think the most specific reaction you've had visually on this call so far is when I said the word safe. And again, right there. What is it about that word that made you had that reaction both times now?
safe from what? Like, what
Hmm.
are we ever really safe from?
Hmm.
It's rarely is it life or death. Most of the time, it's judgment. Most of the time, it's consequences that are not going to happen. And there's this great quote by Anais Nin that I always come back to: life shrinks or expands in proportions to one's courage, right? And to keep allowing yourself to grow, because to me, safety is almost the opposite of potential, right? We stop exploring what we could be and instead start settling for what we should be. And in that, something in us dies by playing it safe. I walked out of an audition as an actor thinking, why was I even there? I didn't do anything. I didn't change the room. I didn't disturb the air. I was just invisible. And what a horrible way to go through our lives. Like, let people know you're there. So for me, that is safety is fading into the background.
Yeah, I've come to really not love that. Should is one safe. When someone's like, stay safe. I remember I heard a story at Grant Cardone. I don't know if you know him. I'm not a huge fan.
No.
Grant Cardone's a financial guy, but he fired the housekeeper because the housekeeper kept saying to the children to stay safe. He goes, if you tell my children to stay safe one more time, I'm going to fire you. And he fired her because it's like, I don't want my children playing it safe. I want them taking risks. And this idea that you should shrink and be safe. Like you're saying, it's like, the stakes on a day-to-day basis, the odds that any of us are going to meet our demise, certainly in an acting space, it's just not going to happen. It's like a trillion to one. So, but I feel this. Do you feel, just in a general sense, there's more reverence? Is that the right word for the word safety? It seems like safety continues to take more of a front seat because you hear this word a lot now, and I don't know the statistics, and I have no idea if it actually. This is just my own anecdotal. Do you feel like safety is something that has been? We put more value on safety of recent, or less, or neutral? I'm going way out on a limb here. I have no
I
idea.
don't know. That's a really
Yeah.
great question. I think, in our social media age, it feels like we probably put a little bit more value on putting out like safe ideas into the world because we're afraid of the consequences.
Right.
Um, but I really don't know. And all we can, all I can do is recognize when I am playing it safe, when I am playing it small,
How
or
do you
when I
know?
might be, for me, oh, when I start focusing more on the negative outcome than I do the positive outcome. For me, I know I'm starting to play it safe. That's fear and anxiety taking over. I remember renting the space that I'm in right now. I was 7 months pregnant and everything in me was like, what are you doing right now? Your life is expanding in this mad way. What are you doing? Everything can go wrong. You can lose everything here. And I just thought, well, no, it's a lease. It's money. It's a chance. It's a risk. It's an investment in myself. I can do this. Right.
Mm.
So like I had to take myself off of, oh, how dare you? How dare you go there? and saying, yeah, go there, go there.
Uh, Not religion, but it sounds like faith had to play a role at that time. And you brought up something I did want to talk about, Jamie, and maybe 10 or 15 more minutes. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, I have no idea what time it is. Yeah,
It's only
as
10,
long
20.
as we're done by 11, that's
Yeah.
fine because I
Okay. I
didn't
just
think
want to
you
make,
felt
yeah, I
that.
just want to make sure. Yeah.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of moms out there, or a lot of, soon, want to be moms, soon to be moms. And I would love, and what you just laid out here is, 7 months pregnant, about to have a tiny human. Let me take a big risk. Let me take a huge risk and see what not. Somebody else might say, "Well, let me have the tiny human first. Let me start to get on my feet, and maybe let me ask you, why did you jump at 7 months pregnant? Why not wait until after? Why was that particular point in time?
There was a voice alive in me that's smarter than me that said, do it now. Just do it now. Because the minute you have this child, everything's going to get harder. This is easy as it's going to be again. Do it right now. That said, it was also still terrifying to do it at that time. But I'm so glad I did because there would have been no way starting out with a newborn that I could also even think about that we could even think about starting space. It would have been so overwhelming because that season of life is very overwhelming and very new and very beautiful, but like, the ground cracks beneath you and your identity shifts deeply and forever. So in the last 2 months before I was a mom, it was the time to do it. But it was probably one of the most terrifying times I could have chosen to do it.
Right. And then, like, let me choose to do two of the hardest things on the planet Earth at the same time,
Yeah.
which is have a child and start a business. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this for the women out. I mean, this is fantastic for listeners because they get to hear, hey, like you literally, because the start of a business is like, yeah, as you live it. Like, so how the hell did you manage to raise a human being and at the same time be obviously very effective in providing a very valuable service and grow this business? How the hell did you do that? What'd you do?
Honestly, most of it is just allowing yourself to be a little bit of a mess and showing up with your whole heart and saying, this is where I am today. This is what I can accomplish today. And having a wonderful partner, my husband, who is right there with me in the raising of our daughter and being just as committed as I am to building this, wildly helpful. But it's hard. And I had a therapist once who said this great phrase to me, Jamie, there is no easy way to suffer. And some of it you're going to suffer through. You're going to suffer through sleepless nights as a business owner, as a new parent. And you're going to do difficult things because you can. And you're going to be compassionate with yourself because that's what you need to be at this moment. And it takes a lot of juggling. But for me, there's almost in every career I've ever had, there has been this 3-year period where you're going to be doing all of this invisible work and it's going to be thankless and relentless. And from 2017 to 2020, I was studying 4 hours a day about coaching, about the nervous system, just learning. I was studying privately with Larry Moss, which was very expensive, but also extraordinary time. And not knowing where it was going to lead. And then 3 years later, it just exploded. And then I would say the same thing I'm noticing in just raising a child. She is now starting preschool, but like those first 3 years were grueling. They're grueling. And it's just a matter of saying, I'm going to do these things that nobody's ever going to see, but that actually stack up and add up to a career, an experience of a parenthood, a child. You're building a child's childhood and their relationship with themselves. And wherever you are, to allow yourself to actually be present there. For me, blocking off my time is magic, right? There is a study block that I will always have. There is time that is with my daughter, with my family that nobody can touch. there are moments where I'm with clients and I'm alive and present with them, right? And it's the same thing that you were saying, Michael, is like channeling that energy of being alive and being present. It's just a series of doing that and trusting that the structure is there so that you can live through the chaos of your days. That that's my answer for that.
Would you have been able to, would the result have been the same if you took on a new job? I know the answer to this question. I'm not going to ask that question. You know, but what I took away from that personally, Jamie, is that because you were driven by a higher purpose, because you took a leap of faith, because this thing that you were pursuing was aligned with your soul, you were able to be in these two simultaneous life altering, life challenging, soul challenging situations and not completely fall apart and really come out the other end
Yep.
strong. $6 million women, like stronger, faster, better kind of thing, right? That's really what it seemed to happen. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And because almost everything I was doing was energizing me. There were so many tests we have, right? Like you were saying, you're flying first class. It should be like fulfilling, but it's not. It's draining you. It's draining you of something because it's not aligned with what you want to be doing. So when you're living on purpose, when you're being intentional with your time and your days, it's so much easier. I am surrounded every day by people I adore. Like every day. I'm going to teach 3 classes today and I adore the people I get to work with. I'm going to go home to my husband and my child and I adore them. I'm talking to you, I adore you. Like, well, what is to complain about? Because achievements are fine, whatever, but relationships, moment to moment of life, it's much smaller than we give it credit for. We're looking at these, once I get here, I'll be this, or once I do this, I'll be that. Like, no, you're here, man. This is your life. This is it. There's that saying, we all live 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realize there's only one. It's that. Like, what are you doing day to day? Who you're spending your time with? Because that is the actual time of your life. What are you doing with it?
There's a belief that's grown on me. For a long time, it's like, well, you should do what you love, and I thought that was true because, well, yeah, that makes sense. It's better to, of course, do something you love than something you don't love. And I thought that was the reason. And then a few years ago, I learned that, yes, sort of, but when you're doing something that gives you energy, there's a certain vibration that happens. And there's a certain attractiveness that happens. And I don't mean physical, but that too. Just an energetic attraction. And the picture that you're painting, like, when I go teach my students at UNH on a Monday, I am in fuego. Like, the being in the room, being in, like you, being in the room, helping people get out of their own way, inspiring the best in others to come out and play. Like, I have a limitless energy, like absolutely limitless. So it occurred to me, it's like, no, you do what you love because you get access to a level of energy and feeling that is only accessible if you're enjoying those moments and you're in a situation around people, places, and things that fuel you. Like, I mean, like, people don't realize, like, teaching 3 classes, the level of fucking concentration, for those of you that don't know, for Jamie to sit through 3 classes and to have dozens of actors go up, okay, to do that 3 times in a day and to give everybody equal energy, which Jamie does. The energy that it takes to do that is abso-fucking-lutely impossible if you don't love what you're doing. There is no way. There's just no way. And that's what I love about it, because you have to be in the space of your bliss to be able to even deliver the minimum that these folks are showing up to get in the space. And it's just, that's why it's like top of your game. I saw, like, when I saw you, it's like you were like, you're just on another plane. And it was very, very clear. Like, when I looked at you in space that first time, I was like, oh man, she's like you're on I can't even describe, I'm gesturing right now for those people that are listening and not watching. But it's like this space of something that is beyond oneself. And it's something that, as terrifying that it has been for me to pursue, like you say, Jamie, we have one life. And it's like, what if I get run over tomorrow, I'm gonna be like, oh man, I wish I really would have took that. Damn it, man. I wish I would have, I wish I was still an event planner. Like, no, once, and the thing is, this fucked up thing is like, here's an analogy for you. It's like, you know, I was flown first class. I wasn't paying for it. But once for those of you that may have or may have not, once you've flown first class on a 3-class plane where it's first class and then business and then coach, and you've had a fucking sundae bar roll down the aisle and they ask you what you want and they make a sundae for you. And, it's very hard to go back the other way in that. But equally, once you've tasted this bliss, you can't go back. You're screwed. I am screwed. I'm ruined for the rest of my life. I can never have a job there. And that's the beauty of it. There are no other options. This is it. Like
Yeah.
the doors are closed.
I have sat in this chair and I have watched actors get up in that space that I'm pointing to right there and change their relationships with themselves and what they believe is possible for their lives. And you cannot put a price tag on that. And it is why I show up and why I will always show up. 3 classes, 5 classes, whatever you want to hit me with, because that is magic.
Let me ask you this. Has there ever been another question I think I know the answer to? Jamie talking about showing up when, it's hard. Like, everybody has bad days. You might not have slept the night before. Was there ever a class or ever a moment where you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't have shown up for that?
No.
Never.
No, I've never had
Never,
a
ever, 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 ever. No matter how shitty you felt before the class, right?
No.
Something it just exited. Does it exit you when
it does.
when the actor goes?
The minute you start, because bring it back to Meisner. The minute you put your focus on the other, you're free and you're present with them, and all of the thoughts and like the little worries that you have slip away, and it reinvigorates you. And teaching, coaching, directing demands that you show up and be present. And thank God, because otherwise you get stuck up in your head. It puts you in your body, it puts you in the space. And the minute I'm in that groove, and the minute we're sharing ideas, and you teach, so you know that you learn just as much from the people you work with as they do from you. You're just alive in a whole other way. And I don't even have the right words to express my gratitude for the people that I get to work with. I don't.
But if you had to. You got me this. So I got like maybe one more question, and then I've got a couple here.
If I
could you talk a little bit about?
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
No,
what were you going to say?
You go.
I was going to say this. I have like you, Jamie. I think I used to think acting and life were similar, and then I realized they were parallel, and then I realized they're exactly the fucking same. So this idea of this technique that you teach in your space to actors, to artists, is there a parallel? Do you see a parallel? Can you make a connection to the craft of acting, helping someone, these ideas helping someone live a better life that's not an actor, that might be in technology or some other sort of non-art adjacent path?
Absolutely. I think, doesn't it always come back to what's really happening here? What's really happening here? What's happening for me? What are my intentions? What is it I'm trying to do? And am I alive and present in the moment as I'm doing it? For me, it's not about pursuing happiness. It's about pursuing fulfillment and making sure that you're spending your days fulfilled and engaged.
What's the difference, Jamie? How would you define the difference between happiness and fulfillment?
I'm very happy if you sit me down and let me scroll on Zillow for houses that I want to look at in California. But I'm wildly unfulfilled if I do that, right? Like you can spend 2 hours lost in an internet vortex of just ooh, serotonin hit. And then you finish it and you're like, what did I just do? But I'm fulfilled when I'm coming up against the edges of my own abilities, my own current abilities, and I'm learning something or I'm taking, which still is magic to me, I'm taking an idea that somebody will give me for the cost of a book at $14.99, and something that took them a lifetime to learn, and I'm getting to take that in and swirl that around in my own experience and how that might relate to clients, to my life, to my relationships, then I am fulfilled. When I'm trying to figure out what's happening, what do I do with this piece of knowledge? What could I do to be a better anything? I'm fulfilled. And I think that for me keeps you so engaged in your own life.
Mhm.
And it's so easy to get to fall into this rut of, I'm seeing it even now with my daughter, and when like well-meaning people are saying, "Oh, I think she's going to do this." I'm like, she's 3. And 2, I don't want her to think that there is this day that you become a grown-up. There are a series of days of your life that you will live, and every day you're deciding, what type of person do I want to be? How do I want to show up for myself? How do I want to show up in the world? And to know that that's going to be seasonal. What you're doing today, you might not be doing a week from now. And to stay open and engaged to what problems am I developing myself to be able to solve? Because every one of us is so unique, and your career should match your uniqueness. Your life should match your uniqueness, I think. And not a someday maybe what could happen version of you.
As if you arrive at a moment in time and that you stay in that moment of time forever. I'm going to be this. Okay, well, what does the day to day of that look
Yeah.
like? Is it,
Right.
yeah.
That is the despair of the Olympic gold, of the Academy Award, is that, you wake up that next day and you're like, oh wait, now what?
Now what? I did
Now
it. Now
what?
what?
It's there is no there's no arrival. It's just, how are you traveling? And you
Mm.
want to travel in a way that sparks your curiosity and connections.
I've got my final question here that I'm
Okay.
looking at here, and we've got a little bit of time left. And I wanted to leave space if you have questions for me, which I don't usually do, but you did mention in the beginning. So
I love it. I
if
do.
there are any questions you have, I think you know me by now, Jamie. I'm an open book. So if not,
Oh, I
I've
do.
got my okay.
I do. Oh, do. So you said this wonderful thing, and I thought it was one. I love that you talk about the camera as an accelerator, that it makes us look inward the minute it's turned on us.
Yeah.
My question is, what has been your own experience with that?
Personally, with the camera,
Yeah, what have you noticed?
um, ooh, that's a wide range.
What does it accelerate for you?
Insecurities. Insecurities. I have found uh, there's even now I'm aware of it. There's something for me. Well, it's kind of weird, Jamie, because I'm like half exhibitionist, half shy. So in some ways, I love the camera. In some ways, it can accelerate insecurities. For me, um, I have realized in myself the stakes go up as soon as that camera is rolling. There's something that like there's something that happens. Not even when you're just like, when you go up in class or in a class or on set or whatever, there's something that happens when this is pointed at you. I'm gesturing to the camera for the just listeners. And for me, here's what it is, and it's not my words, but it's the best I can come up with it. There was a documentary called Side by Side by Keanu Reeves. Have you
Hmm.
watched this?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and the actor's talking about how film versus digital, when you would hear the actor, that was fucking money going through the camera, and that's the stakes were really really high. So I think like as an accelerator, for me, one, there is being the experience of being in front of the camera and being with someone and having that be watched, and have to up my consciousness in a way where I'm fully present with my partner, but at the same time I'm leaving an openness to this device that is capturing me. It accelerates like my attention both gets more focused and wider at the same time. And it's a really weird thing to be able to be like, I'm focused, I'm surrendering to this person, but at the same time, there's a minute awareness that I just can't do this, right? Like, I can't, I have to be cognizant of the fact that I'm in a small frame, and if I'm like gonna do this, it's not gonna work. So it's a really interesting. It like turns the dial up on my. It accelerates my energy in a way where it's like, okay, like like things just kind of, to use a camera analogy, like really zoom in and they tighten up, and I'm looking at you on the screen. They tighten up on the person, but at the same time, I'm dedicating that. Then watching oneself on camera and seeing oneself, you get to see, I feel sometimes, how the world sees you. And usually that's a better, like,
Mm.
it can be jarring at first, but there has always been a disparity between what I thought happened in the moment and what I see happen later on the screen, and go, oh, that actually was like good. Like you put it in quotes, like I was alive in the moment. I was specific. What I did was compelling. So I have found, for me personally, why it's so important to have, a coach like you, or someone around you to let you know what's going on, is like, I've not been a very good judge of how something has gone. So that was a way convoluted answer to your question.
No, it was great. That was great. That was really great. Because I've spent my life working with people and cameras. I spent the last 25 years working with people and cameras, and I've definitely noticed it. And I thought you put it so beautifully, that it is an accelerator of watching yourself and watching an awareness of self that takes away our ability to. Yeah, you got something
This
else?
is what it is. Here we go.
Yes.
The
Okay.
camera reveals everything that is unloved. That's it. And as a photographer, and after having photographed
See, I'm writing that down, Michael.
literally well over 1,000 people right now, Jamie, and because when you asked about me, it was a little more difficult because I was so close to it. But in my observation and having photographed literally hundreds and hundreds of people, I have noticed what the camera does. The number one thing it does, it will instantly reveal everything about ourselves that is unloved. And it gives us a wonderful opportunity to either hate the fuck out of ourselves more, or go, you know what? I'm okay. I'm going to send love to that. I'm going to send love to the way my face looks, or my nose looks, or my mouth. Like I am not, and being in the business that I'm in, getting people on camera, all you got to do is, I know, point a camera at someone, they freak the fuck out. It's like nothing's changed. Like I'm just here, like in an interview. I'm like, there happens to be a camera there. But
Yep.
all of a sudden, and what I've noticed, Jamie, with the camera, is that people, it's really cool because it's a should revealer. Like I do a lot of on-camera interviews with people, and I'm like, I'm just talking to you the way we would talk if we were in a coffee shop.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden it's different because there happens to be, and you start to do, well, not immediately, like, well, how should I move my hands? How should I talk? What are you talking about? You're a fucking scientist, subject matter expert. I just need you to answer this question that I know you fucking know the answer to. But now that there's a camera rolling, all of a sudden you've lost the ability to speak. And to me, that still can be a mystery. It remains a mystery to me sometimes, Jamie. I don't always understand.
Well, I've written it down, though. The camera reveals everything that is unloved, because I think that is fantastic. And it reminds me of something that Larry always says. We watch ourselves for fear of being revealed, right? So we start watching ourselves on camera because we're like, well, don't make that face. Don't do this thing. Don't do that. Don't let anybody see that ugly shadow side of yourself. All right. The same thing with Meisner, the repetitions, which I wish had been explained to me better when I was younger.
Same. Oh man.
Say it before you can think about it. Let yourself be seen. Say it before you can think. Don't block the impulse. It's always, to me, I always tell actors, it's like the opposite of how to live a well-meaning life is you want to put space between the impulse and the action, right? To be responsive in life. But as an actor, you want to take that space away.
It's funny you say that. Deborah Headwall at Rutgers in the Meisner training the first year, she goes, we're going to teach you a technique on the opposite of how to behave in every relationship in your life.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's like, and experiencing that, there's something that happens when, because I believe the body speaks first.
Oh, yes.
And I believe when this impulse that you're talking about, you're literally just speaking what's happening in your body without it letting it filter through your editor, your consciousness. And what you said about what Larry said, we watch ourselves for fear of being revealed. Is that what it was?
Yep.
Yeah, I've never heard that. But it makes sense. You're editing yourself for the fear of, I might make a mistake or say something I shouldn't or whatever. And I've never really ever, I mean, maybe one or two times, but I've never seen anybody be impulsive and dangerous or impulsive and mean. You know what I'm saying? It's
No,
usually, no, it's usually from a place of love. These impulses come from, even if
I
it is
agree.
anger, even if it is, distraughtness. Yeah.
I agree. Wait, I have one more
Wow.
question for you. I have one more
Sure.
question. Is that okay? So you also
Absolutely.
said this thing that I loved, and I'm curious about this. When you started to fall in love with photography, that you reached out to a bunch of photographers that you admired, and some of them responded. What were the questions you had for them?
How did you do that? Like, okay, yeah, like how, so I'll get choked up right now. He's no longer with us. There's a photographer, It was a photographer named George Pitts. George Pitts was a founding member at Vibe magazine. He was photo editor at Life magazine, and he was a photography head at, I think, the Parsons School. George is a true New Yorker in that he didn't have a fucking driver's license. And he was literally didn't have a driver's license, but he needed someone to drive him and assist him on a shoot in Washington, D.C. And at the time, I had like no money and I like no credit card. So I like had my partner Rebecca like put the money up so I could go rent a car that he was going to reimburse me for, but I didn't have it, and then drive George from New York City to Washington D.C. in one day, shoot this model for a book he was producing, and then come back up. And one of the things, this is probably not the answer to your question, but one of the things that struck me, and this brings us full circle. Now, this is George Pitts. George Pitt, at the time, is like in the air. I mean, like this is a living legend who is incredible. He only shot on film. He only shot 6x6 film and Polaroid, old school. Incredible artist, well established, galleries, the whole thing. Here I am, Michael Cinquino, nobody, sitting next to him in this car, like just started as a photographer maybe a year ago, no fucking idea what I'm doing. And I sat in that car with George. And before I got to ask him a question, all he did was ask me questions about myself with a genuine sense of curiosity, as if I was an equal, as if I was as good as he was. He said, why are you a photographer? And I was like, well, he's like, do you think, and he literally interviewed me and for 4 hours on the way down. And I was like, my God, this guy has every reason in the world to be like, yo, Michael, I'm going to tell you how things are in this car ride. Just fucking take some notes. I know you're driving, but make mental notes, buddy, because I'm going to drop some gold. He didn't do any of that. I actually didn't get a chance to ask him any questions. And then when I was in the space and we were working, I got to just watch the way he worked. And he going back to Larry with 8-hour classes, George would shoot for like 6 hours. I was like, how the fuck? I'm like, how? He's like, Michael, it's the art of hanging out. He's like, things are going to happen in 6 hours that cannot happen in an hour. He's like, so just relax, get to know this person, be curious about, and he would ask her questions and like just hang out with them. He's like, grab a banana, like whatever, like just chill. So for me, I wanted to know how he created these images. And I was given a way better lesson of like he was curious about Michael Cinquino, who was basically nobody to him at the time.
Yep.
So there was that. And then also getting in the space with him and just paying fucking attention to what this artist is doing and how he likes to work. So that's, I even forgot what you asked me, Jamie.
No,
But
that
that
was
was, oh,
brilliant.
what,
Are
yeah,
you kidding?
yeah.
That was the best. That was the best answer he could have given me. Because the most successful people, and by successful, I mean that are fulfilled and engaged in what they're doing, are curious. They're forever learning and forever taking in their surroundings, and that's what he was doing.
Now I have to mark it because how curiosity was the thing. How the hell did we wound up closing on? Because you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, universe. So check this out.
Okay.
Check this out. I know. Did you know you were going to be asked the Bernard Pivot questionnaire?
No.
So, I got to teach a couple times at headshot on camera photography stuff at the Actors Studio, and James Lipton is somebody that Dean Lipton at the time, Dean Emeritus Lipton, I got to sit next to and chat up. But I'm sure it was I'm assuming, but the Actors Studio was one of my favorite shows in the history of all television shows. And for those of you that don't know, James is no longer with us. And I thought to myself on this show, well, it's America, it's my show. I can maybe carry on this tradition of asking these questions. And the fact that I get to be across from you and ask Jamie Carroll these questions, to me is fucking beautiful. So with that being said, Jamie Carroll, what is your favorite word?
Possible.
What is your least favorite word?
Safety.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Empathy and excellence.
What turns you off?
Judgment.
What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck. So versatile.
What sound or noise do you love?
My daughter is saying mom.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Motorcycles. So loud.
Hmm.
Just when there's 20 of them on the West Side Highway, it's so loud.
Ugh. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Investigative reporter.
Hmm. What profession would you not ever like to do?
Oh, I couldn't ever work as a doctor. I couldn't ever work as a doctor. I don't know how they do it every day. It's an extraordinary gift, but to be working in the ER, and I have clients that do that, I bow down to that ability. I don't have it.
Hmm. Last question.
Yes.
If heaven exists and you believe in such a thing, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
How'd that go?
Listeners, this is Jamie Carroll. Jamie, if someone listening to this is in New York or maybe beyond New York, how can they get connected to you?
You can find me at jamiecarroll.co, not .com. Or find me on Instagram, Jamie_Carroll. I don't have a TikTok or anything like that.
Neither do I. Jamie, thank you.
Thank you. I cried at least 15 times. Yeah.